The pepper spray was still in her hand when she heard him break. He stood over her bed at 2:47 a.m., this stranger who'd been terrorizing her for weeks, and she was supposed to be asleep. Supposed to be safe behind closed eyes and shallow breathing. But then his hand touched her hair, not rough, not violent, and his voice shattered into pieces. "Rosie, baby, I'm so sorry. Daddy's here now. Daddy's." He choked on the word. On the lie. Because Rosie wasn't there. Rosie would never be there again. And Iris realized, with ice flooding her veins, that the most dangerous thing in her bedroom wasn't the man. It was the truth he couldn't remember. Fear looks different when you understand it. But understanding might be the most dangerous thing of all. If you're ready for a story that will break you open, stay. You'll need to if the first line already hit you in the chest. Don't scroll. Stay. Stories like this aren't just fiction, they're mirrors. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the moments that remind us why we still feel, still forgive, still hope. And if you've ever known fear that turned into understanding, drop a comment below. Someone might need to read your story too. 3 weeks earlier. The locksmith looked at her like she was paranoid. "Ma'am, that's the 4th deadbolt this month." He wiped his hands on his coveralls, leaving grease smudges that matched the ones under his eyes. "I'm just saying, might be cheaper to get a dog." Iris forced a smile, the kind she'd perfected in client meetings when someone questioned her design choices. Professional. Unbothered. Completely in control. "I like redundancy." Redundancy. He tested the new lock, a smart deadbolt with an app, a code, and a backup key she'd already hidden in 3 separate locations. "Lady, you've got enough security here to protect the crown jewels. What are you so afraid of?" Everything, she thought. Footsteps I shouldn't hear. Shadows in rooms I know are empty. The feeling that someone's been in my house, touching my things, standing over me while I sleep. "Just cautious," she said instead, handing him cash. "No paper trail." "Thank you." He left, shaking his head. Iris locked the door behind him, all 4 locks in sequence, and pressed her forehead against the wood. The house was supposed to be a blessing. Aunt Margot had left it to her in the will, a gorgeous 1920s craftsman in southeast Portland with original hardwood floors and built-in bookshelves and those beautiful leaded glass windows that caught the light like scattered jewels. A place to finally put down roots, Margot had written in her letter. A place to stop running, sweetheart. But Iris hadn't stopped running. She'd just brought her fear into a bigger cage. The house felt wrong. Not haunted, she wasn't superstitious, but occupied. Like someone else's life had left an imprint she couldn't scrub away. At night, the floorboards creaked in a pattern too deliberate to be settling. Sometimes she'd find the kitchen window unlatched in the morning, though she knew she'd checked it. Once, her coffee mug had been moved from the sink to the drying rack overnight. Small things. Deniable things. Until 3 nights ago. She'd woken at 2:47 a.m. to the sound of boots on hardwood. Heavy, measured, military precise. Walking her hallway. She'd frozen in bed, phone clutched to her chest, finger hovering over 911. The footsteps had stopped outside her bedroom door. "Get out of my house." The voice was male. Rough. Absolutely certain. She'd waited trembling for the door to open. For violence. For proof that she was about to die in this inheritance she'd never really wanted. But nothing happened. The footsteps retreated. A door closed somewhere downstairs. By the time she'd found the courage to check, pocket knife in one shaking hand, phone in the other, the house was empty. Every door still locked. Every window sealed. No evidence. No explanation. Just the certain knowledge that she wasn't alone. Iris threw herself into work because work had rules. Work made sense. As a freelance graphic designer, she could control her environment completely. Just her tablet, her studio space upstairs in what used to be someone's sewing room. The afternoon light hit it perfectly. She'd set up her desk facing the window, surrounded by plants and art prints and all the carefully curated elements of a life that looked stable from the outside. Her current project was a rebrand for a local coffee roaster. Safe. Warm. All earth tones and hand-lettered fonts that screamed artisanal authenticity. She'd presented 3 concepts yesterday and the client had loved option 2, which meant she could execute the final designs today and invoice by Friday and have enough to cover another month's utilities. Another month of pretending everything was fine. Her phone buzzed. Text from her friend Sienna. Drinks tomorrow? You've been ghosting. Iris stared at the message. When had they last made plans? 2 months ago? 3? Sienna had stopped inviting her to things after she'd cancelled the 4th time in a row. Can't. Deadline, she typed. Then deleted it. Then typed, rain check? Swamped. The truth, that she was afraid to leave the house after dark, afraid of what she might come home to, felt too heavy to text. Sienna sent back a thumbs-up emoji that somehow felt like disappointment. Iris set the phone face down and returned to her logo concepts, but her concentration had cracked. She found herself listening instead of working. Listening for the sounds that didn't belong. Listening for him. Because it was always the same voice. The same boots. The same route through her house, like he was checking a perimeter. She'd tried everything rational first. Called the police, who'd found no signs of forced entry. Called a security company, who'd installed cameras that mysteriously malfunctioned every night between 2 and 4 a.m. She'd even called a priest, who'd blessed the house and given her a pamphlet on anxiety disorders. No one believed her. And honestly, some nights she didn't believe herself. Declan Ashford woke up at the VA Community Living Center with the taste of blood in his mouth. He'd bitten his cheek again. Happened during the dreams, the ones where he was back in that hallway, where he could still hear Vivian screaming for him, where Rosie's nightlight was still glowing through the cracked door. Where he was still too late. Morning, sunshine. Lorenzo, one of the night attendants, stood in the doorway with that careful expression they all wore around Declan. Like he was a bomb they were paid to keep from exploding. You were loud last night. Want to talk about it? No. Dr. Brennan wants to see you at 9. Tell her I'm fine. Declan, you know that's not. I'm fine. Lorenzo raised his hands in surrender. Your call, brother. Breakfast in 20. The door closed. Declan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting his breaths the way they'd taught him in therapy. 4 in, hold for 7, 8 out. Again. Again. Until the shaking in his hands stopped. He was 34 years old. Former Army Ranger. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. He'd led men through IED-laden roads and survived ambushes and earned a Bronze Star and come home without a scratch. And then his family had been murdered in their own home while he was at the grocery store buying milk. 3 years ago. Sometimes it felt like yesterday. Sometimes it felt like someone else's life entirely. The therapist said he had severe PTSD with dissociative episodes. Said his mind was trying to process trauma by reliving it, creating patterns, searching for control in chaos. They used words like hypervigilance and survivor's guilt and complicated grief. What they meant was, you're broken and we don't know how to fix you. Declan sat up, wincing at the stiffness in his left knee, courtesy of a hard landing during his last deployment. His room at the VA was small but clean. Narrow bed, desk, chair, window with a view of the parking lot. Everything temporary. Everything provisional. Like he was just visiting his own life. He dressed in jeans and a black Henley, laced up his boots, same pair he'd worn in country, resoled 3 times, and studied his reflection in the small mirror above the sink. Haircut still military short. Jaw still hard. Eyes still gone. He barely recognized himself anymore. The wedding ring on his left hand caught the light. He should take it off. Vivian had been dead for 3 years. But removing it felt like erasing her, and he'd already failed to protect her. He couldn't fail to remember her too. Declan sat through breakfast without tasting it. Sat through the group therapy session without speaking. Sat through Dr. Brennan's concerned questions with one-word answers until she finally sighed and said, "You're not engaging, Declan. If you don't want to be here, you can leave. But you know what happens when you leave." He knew. The first year after Vivian and Rosie died, he'd lived alone in a studio apartment and drunk himself into oblivion every night. The second year he'd gotten sober and started having the episodes, waking up in strange places, losing hours, driving to the old house and sitting outside until the new owners called the cops. The third year, he'd voluntarily checked into the VA program because he was afraid of what he might do otherwise. But the episodes hadn't stopped. Every night, something pulled him back to that house. To the scene of his failure. His mind needed to complete the ritual, check the doors, patrol the rooms, protect his family. Even though they were gone. Even though some stranger lived there now. Especially because some stranger lived there now. His therapists called it intrusive compulsion. Declan called it hell. But he couldn't stop. That night, at 2:14 a.m., Declan woke up fully dressed in the VA parking lot, keys in his hand, no memory of leaving his room. It was happening again. He got in his truck, an old Ford Ranger Vivian had always threatened to replace, and drove through empty Portland streets like a ghost. He knew this route by heart. Knew every light, every turn, every crack in the pavement. The house appeared through the rain like a memorial. His house. Their house. The place where he'd planned to grow old with Vivian, where Rosie would have learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where they'd have hosted Thanksgivings and birthday parties and all the small, ordinary miracles of a life well lived. Now someone else lived there. Some woman he'd glimpsed through the windows. Dark skin, natural hair pulled back while she worked, always alone. She didn't belong there. But he didn't either. Not anymore. Declan parked 2 blocks away, muscle memory, and approached on foot. The security cameras were disabled. He'd figured out the system months ago. A simple wireless jammer killed the signal. He'd stopped questioning why he knew these things, why his training had stayed sharp even as everything else crumbled. He had work to do. The back door opened to his key. The new owner had changed the locks on the front, but not the back. Sloppy. Someone could break in. Someone could hurt her. You're protecting her, some distant part of his mind whispered. Even though you can't protect anyone. Declan moved through the first floor like a shadow. Checked the window latches. Tested the door locks. His boots echoed on the hardwood. Vivian had loved these floors, had spent weeks refinishing them herself while pregnant with Rosie. He climbed the stairs. Rosie's room was on the left. He couldn't look at it without seeing her small body on the floor, her night light shattered, her stuffed rabbit soaked in. No. Don't think it. Just check the perimeter. He moved to the master bedroom. The door was open. Inside, the woman was sleeping, or seemed to be. She was curled on her side, dark coils spread across the pillow, breathing soft and even. For a moment, in the dim light, her silhouette looked like Vivian's. Declan's chest tightened. "Get out of my house," he said. The words came automatically, part of the script his mind insisted on replaying. He didn't mean them. Didn't even know he was speaking. But the woman didn't wake. Didn't move. Safe, then. For tonight. He turned to leave, and something stopped him. A feeling. A wrongness in the pattern. Her blanket had slipped off her shoulders. The room was cold. He could see her shivering slightly. In the fog of his dissociation, Declan found himself moving closer. Found himself picking up the blanket. Found himself tucking it around her with hands that remembered gentleness. "I'm sorry," he whispered. To Vivian. To Rosie. To this stranger whose rest he kept disrupting. "I'm so sorry I didn't." His voice broke. He left before he could finish the sentence. Left before he could question what he was doing. Left before the fog cleared and he had to face what he'd become. By the time he returned to the VA, dawn was breaking. Lorenzo found him in the common room, staring at nothing. "Bad night?" Lorenzo asked gently. Declan touched his wedding ring. "They're all bad nights. We've all been haunted by something, a loss, a fear, a memory we can't let go. Have you ever felt trapped by your own past? Share your thoughts below. And if you're feeling this story already, maybe stick around. We're just getting started." Iris had been planning this for 3 days. Research. Preparation. Strategy. She treated it like a design problem, identify the pattern, understand the variables, test a hypothesis. The pattern was clear. He came every night between 2:30 and 3 a.m. He walked the same route. He said the same words. And then he left. But last night, something had changed. She'd heard him on the stairs, closer than ever before. Heard him pause outside her bedroom. And for the first time, she'd been too paralyzed with fear to even reach for her phone. Tonight would be different. Tonight, she would pretend to sleep. She would observe instead of hide. She would finally see who, or what, was haunting her inheritance. She lay in bed fully clothed beneath the covers, Phone tucked under her pillow set to silent, pepper spray palmed in her right hand. Every muscle was tense. Her heart hammered so hard she was certain he'd hear it. Breathe. Just breathe. You need answers. The house settled around her. The heater clicked on. Rain drummed against the windows. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. And then, boots on hardwood. Downstairs. Iris's breath caught. She forced her eyes closed, forced her body into the loose sprawl of sleep. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to call for help. But she stayed perfectly still. The footsteps moved through the first floor. Methodical. Checking something. She heard the kitchen window slide shut. Had she left it open? She always checked. Didn't she? Then the stairs. Each step deliberate, measured. He's coming up. Oh God, he's coming up. The footsteps reached the landing. Paused. She could feel him there, just outside her open bedroom door, a presence so heavy it seemed to displace the air itself. Get out of my house. The voice was rough, male, broken somehow. Not angry, *wounded star. Like the words hurt him to say. Iris kept her breathing even. Slow. In, out. In, out. She could feel sweat beading on her upper lip. The footsteps entered her room. Every cell in her body screamed danger. Her fingers tightened on the pepper spray under the blanket. She could hear him moving closer. Closer. Until he was standing directly over her bed. This is it. This is when he. But nothing happened. He just stood there. Breathing. She could smell him now, rain, something like gun oil, and underneath that, something warmer. Soap. Cedar. Human. He's real. Not a ghost. A real person standing over me. The terror should have peaked. Should have sent her bolting. But instead, something stranger happened. She heard him make a sound, soft, almost inaudible. A catch in his breath that sounded like grief. And then she felt it, the blanket being pulled up over her shoulders. Gentle. Careful. The kind of gesture you'd use with someone you didn't want to wake. Someone you were trying to protect. Iris's mind went blank with confusion. His hand, calloused, large, trembling slightly, brushed a few coils away from her face. Not in a creepy way. In the way her father used to when she was small and feverish. Checking. Caring. You're in her room, he whispered. His voice cracked completely. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't. He couldn't finish. The sound that came out of him was purely pain. Iris's eyes nearly flew open. Every assumption she'd built shattered in that moment. This wasn't a predator. This wasn't a threat. This was someone drowning. She felt him step back. Heard him move to the window, checking the lock. Then to the closet door, making sure it was secure. He was checking things. Making sure she was safe. What the hell is happening? He moved toward the door. Stopped. Stood there for what felt like an eternity. She used to sleep just like that, he said so quietly Iris almost missed it. Curled up. Always cold. Then he was gone. Footsteps retreating down the stairs. The back door closing with a soft click. The house settling into silence. Iris waited 5 full minutes before she moved. When she finally sat up, she was shaking so violently she could barely hold her phone. She pulled up the search she'd started days ago, the one she'd been too afraid to finish. Previous owners. This address. Deaths. The news articles loaded one by one, each headline worse than the last. Home invasion leaves 2 dead in SE Portland. Military veteran survives. Wife and daughter killed. Declan Ashford speaks out, I should have been there. And there he was. The photo was 3 years old, taken at some kind of press conference. Declan Ashford, 31, former Army Ranger, face carved from stone, eyes absolutely devastated. Beside him in an older photo, a beautiful blonde woman with a warm smile. Vivian Ashford, 29. And a little girl with dark curls and her father's serious eyes. Rosalie Ashford, 5. Both killed during a home invasion while Declan was out. The perpetrators had been caught, tried, and convicted. But the family was still gone. And this was their house. Her room. He'd said her room. Iris looked around the bedroom with new eyes. The soft yellow walls. The window seat that was perfect for reading. The built-in shelves that still had small nail holes, like something had been hung there. Pictures, maybe. Or a growth chart. This had been Rosie's room. And Declan was still trying to protect her. Iris pressed her hands over her mouth, tears burning hot in her eyes. Not from fear anymore. From something far more complicated. She'd been living in the ruins of someone else's shattered world. And the man who haunted her wasn't a threat. He was a ghost who couldn't stop trying to save people who were already gone. Sometimes the monsters we fear are just people who've lost everything. Have you ever discovered that someone you were afraid of was suffering more than you knew? The story's about to take a turn you won't expect. Stay with us. Iris didn't sleep for the rest of the night. She sat in bed with her laptop, reading everything she could find about Declan Ashford. Every article. Every interview. Every comment section filled with strangers offering prayers and condolences that meant nothing. The facts were brutal in their simplicity. 3 years ago, Declan had gone to the grocery store at 9 p.m. 20 minutes, he'd told Vivian. Just needed milk and bread. He'd kissed Rosie goodnight before leaving. She was already in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit, asking him to check for monsters under the bed when he got home. He never got the chance. 2 men broke in through the back door at 9:17 p.m. The security system was being repaired. It had malfunctioned the week before. Vivian called 911, but they were fast. Efficient. They wanted the safe in the master bedroom, the one with Vivian's inherited jewelry. Vivian fought. The coroner's report mentioned defensive wounds. She tried to protect Rosie. Declan arrived home at 9:32 p.m. to find police cars in his driveway and his entire world ending. The men were caught within 48 hours. Sentenced to life without parole. It didn't matter. Justice was just a word that meant nothing when you came home to silence. Iris read Declan's only public statement, given 2 weeks after the funerals. I survived 2 tours in combat zones. I led men through hell and brought them home. But I couldn't protect my own family in our own home. I should have been there. I should have died instead of them. Every breath I take is one they should have had. The video showed a man hollowed out. Present but not alive. Just like the man who'd stood over her bed hours ago. Iris closed her laptop as dawn broke, her mind racing. She should call the VA. Tell them Declan was breaking into her house. Get him help. Get him stopped. But the memory of his hand tucking the blanket around her, so gentle, so careful, made her hesitate. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He was trying to save someone who was already gone. You're in her room. Iris looked around the yellow walls, the window seat, the small nail holes in the built-in shelves. A little girl had lived here. Had probably sat in that window seat reading books. Had probably begged her parents for just one more story before bed. And then she died terrified, calling for a father who couldn't hear her. Iris pressed her palms against her eyes. This was insane. She was rationalizing a crime. Breaking and entering was breaking and entering, trauma or not. She had every right to feel unsafe. Every right to protect herself. But God, the sound of his voice when it broke. I'm so sorry I didn't. Didn't what? Didn't save them? Didn't die with them? Didn't stop being human enough to go buy milk? She made coffee as the sun rose, her hands shaking. She needed to think clearly. Needed to make a decision that made sense. But nothing about this made sense. That night, Iris did something either brave or stupid, she wasn't sure which. She stayed awake. Left her bedroom door open. Left a lamp on. And when she heard the boots on the hardwood at 2:43 a.m., she sat up in bed and waited. The footsteps paused at the bottom of the stairs. I know you're there, she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. I know who you are. Silence. Long enough that she thought maybe she'd imagined it all. Maybe the stress had finally broken her. Then, footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Cautious. He appeared in her doorway, and Iris got her first real look at him in the light. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Late 30s, maybe, though his eyes looked older. Dark hair military short. A few days of stubble on a jaw that could have been carved from stone. He wore jeans and a dark jacket, and his hands hung loose at his sides, not threatening but ready. Combat ready. He looked exactly like his photos. Except more haunted. You need to leave, he said. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. This isn't, you shouldn't be here. It's my house, Iris said quietly. My aunt left it to me. No. He shook his head, adamant. This is my house. I bought it. I refinished those floors. I painted that wall. Vivian picked out the light fixtures. Rosie chose the color for her room. She wanted yellow like sunshine. His eyes fixed on the yellow walls. Pain rippled across his face. You need to leave, he repeated. You're not safe here. Because of you? Because of, he stopped. Confusion clouded his features. I'm trying to protect. He trailed off, lost. Iris watched him struggle with something internal, something that looked like two realities fighting for dominance. Your name is Declan Ashford, she said gently. You're 34. You live at the VA Community Living Center on Powell. This was your house 3 years ago, but it's not anymore. Don't. The word came out harsh. Don't do that. Don't try to. I know where I am. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Iris stood slowly, carefully. Because I don't think you do. I think you're stuck in the worst night of your life, and your mind won't let you move forward. Stop. His hands clenched into fists. You don't know anything about me. I know you lost your wife and daughter. I know they were killed in a home invasion. I know you blame yourself for not being here. Declan's face went white. How do you? I Googled the address. Found the news articles. Iris took a small step closer. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what happened to them. But Declan, they're gone. And you breaking into my house every night isn't bringing them back. I'm not breaking in. This is my house. I have a key. To the back door, yes. But that lock should have been changed years ago. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or the first crack in whatever delusion was holding him together. She was 5 years old, he whispered. Rosie was 5. She asked me to check for monsters under her bed. I said I'd do it when I got home. His voice broke. But I didn't come home in time. The real monsters were already here. Iris's throat tightened. It wasn't your fault. How can you say that? The anguish in his voice was raw. I'm trained to protect people. I survived ambushes and IEDs and firefights. But I couldn't protect my own daughter in her own bedroom because I went to buy fucking milk. Declan. Get out of her room. The command came back, desperate now. Please. You're in Rosie's room. You're sleeping in her bed. I can't protect you here. I can't protect anyone here. He turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Iris followed without thinking. Wait. Declan, wait. But by the time she reached the first floor, he was gone. The back door stood open, rain blowing in. She closed it slowly, locked it, and leaned against the wood. Her heart was pounding. Her mind was screaming that this was dangerous, that she should call someone, that she was getting involved in something way over her head. But all she could think about was the look on his face when he said Rosie's name. Like speaking it hurt. Like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Have you ever met someone so broken by loss that you couldn't walk away, even when you should? Sometimes compassion is more dangerous than fear. What would you do in Iris's position? Drop your thoughts below, we want to hear them. Iris told herself she wouldn't see him again. She triple-locked every door, added motion sensors, even had Sienna stay the night, just to catch up. But Declan didn't come. And somehow, that absence felt worse. By the fourth night, exhaustion blurred into restlessness. Every sound made her flinch, every silence felt like waiting. What if he was out there, lost in that fog again, trying to find the house that no longer belonged to him? What if this time, someone else found him first, police or worse? She sat on the window seat, Rosie's window seat, staring at the rain until guilt won. At 10:30 p.m. she grabbed her keys, drove through the wet Portland streets, and told herself she was just checking. Just making sure he was safe. Nothing more. The VA Community Living Center loomed like a tired apology. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of disinfectant and old coffee. She asked the night receptionist, "Is Declan Ashford here?" pretending to be a cousin. The woman checked the logbook, frowned. He signed out 2 nights ago, she said. Didn't come back. Iris's pulse stumbled. He left? Without permission. The woman sighed. Mr. Ashford's, a complicated case. Sometimes he disappears for a few days. Usually ends up back here. You family. Something like that. Back in her car, Iris gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. Complicated case. That meant unwell. That meant lost. And that meant he could be anywhere. She found him 3 hours later. He was sitting on the curb across from the house, soaked to the skin, head in his hands. The old Ford Ranger was parked crookedly behind him. A half-empty thermos sat beside his boot. When she stepped out of her car, his head jerked up. For a split second, confusion flickered, then recognition, then shame. You shouldn't be here, he said. I could say the same to you. I didn't mean to come back. His voice was hoarse. Sometimes I just wake up here. I don't even remember driving. Then come inside, she said quietly. Before you get hypothermia. He shook his head. No. I don't go in there anymore. That's theirs. Declan, please. He stared at her for a long time, rain dripping from his lashes. Finally, he exhaled, one of those breaths that sounds like surrender. Inside, the house smelled of coffee and lemon soap. She'd left the kitchen light on, the soft glow turning the wood floors gold. Declan stood just inside the doorway, motionless, like a soldier stepping onto a battlefield he'd sworn never to see again. Sit, Iris said, nodding toward the table. I'll make tea. He didn't move. His eyes scanned the space automatically. Windows, exits, corners. Training. Habit. Trauma. You still check the perimeter, she said. Old reflex. It's okay. You can. He did. Every door, every lock, every latch. Only then did he sit, dripping water onto the floor. Iris handed him a towel. Their fingers brushed, brief, electric, human. He flinched, not from fear but from the shock of touch itself. Why are you doing this? He asked. Because you looked like you needed someone to. I don't need pity. It's not pity. She hesitated. It's empathy. There's a difference. Declan studied her like he was trying to decode a language he'd forgotten. My wife used to say that, he murmured. About empathy. Iris smiled faintly. She sounds kind. She was light. All light. Rosy too. His voice softened. I used to come home from deployment and think, how did I get this lucky? I'd walk through that door and hear Rosie singing in her room, right there where you sleep now. He broke off. The silence after was thick enough to drown in. I know this house isn't mine anymore, he said finally. But sometimes when I close my eyes, it still is. And if I don't walk the rooms, if I don't check every lock, it's like they die again. I get it, Iris said softly. When my parents died, I used to call their voicemail just to hear them breathe between sentences. It's how grief tricks us, makes us think repetition is safety. Declan looked up sharply. What happened to them? Car crash. I was 16. They were late picking me up from a school play. I thought it was my fault for asking them to come. His eyes softened. So you know what guilt feels like. Too well. They sat in quiet understanding, two people haunted by different ghosts but the same silence. Then Iris said, You can't keep doing this, Declan. One day, someone else might move in. Someone who won't understand. You could get hurt. I already am. The honesty in his tone landed like a confession. Iris reached across the table. Then let someone help you. Please. Declan hesitated. Then slowly, his hand covered hers. Warm. Rough. Real. I don't know how, he whispered. Then we'll figure it out. Outside, thunder rumbled, low and distant. For the first time in 3 years, Declan didn't flinch. He stayed on the couch that night, wrapped in one of Margot's old quilts. Iris brewed tea until dawn, sitting in the armchair across from him, afraid that if she blinked, he'd vanish back into whatever memory held him prisoner. At 4:52 a.m., he stirred. I dreamt of her again, he murmured, voice slurred with exhaustion. Rosie said she wasn't scared anymore. Said she liked the lady who moved into her room. Said the yellow walls make her feel warm. Iris swallowed hard. Then maybe that means she's at peace. Declan looked at her through the half-light. Maybe we both could be. Some people walk into our lives when we least expect it, and sometimes they're not there to haunt us, but to remind us we're still alive. Have you ever met someone who made you believe healing was possible again? If this part hit you, don't just scroll past. Stay. It matters. The house felt different in the morning. Not lighter, just quieter, like it was holding its breath. Declan sat at the kitchen table nursing a cup of black coffee, staring at the rain streaming down the window. His clothes had dried overnight, but his eyes still looked wet around the edges, red from exhaustion or grief. Iris couldn't tell. She moved carefully around him, unsure what version of Declan she'd find in daylight. The soldier. The ghost. The man. Do you ever sleep? She asked gently. Sometimes. He looked up at her. But that's when they come back. The dreams. He nodded. They're not dreams. They're replays. Iris leaned against the counter, unsure if she should press further. But something in his posture, tired, defeated, made her sit across from him. Declan, what really happened that night? He didn't answer right away. Just stared into his coffee like it might offer forgiveness. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I should have known. Known what? That something was wrong. Vivian called me before it happened. Said she heard noise outside. I told her it was nothing. Told her I'd be home in 20 minutes. He swallowed hard. It took me 28. Silence filled the room, heavy and human. She used to leave the porch light on when I was deployed, Declan continued. Said it was her way of making sure I could always find my way home. That night, it was off. I didn't notice until the police lights replaced it. Iris's heart ached. That wasn't your fault. Maybe not. But it was my responsibility. His fingers tightened around the mug. That's what no one tells you about being the one who survives. Everyone says you're lucky. But you're not. You're sentenced to remember every sound, every second, everything you didn't do. Iris didn't speak. There were no right words. Only presence. Declan took a shuddering breath and forced himself to meet her eyes. When the VA told me I was experiencing dissociation, I thought they were wrong. Thought I was just haunted. But then one night I woke up here with blood on my hands and He stopped himself, shaking his head. It was paint, he corrected quietly. Red paint from Rosie's old art box. I must have broken in and opened it without realizing. But when I saw it on my hands, I thought, his voice cracked. I thought it happened again. Iris reached across the table and gently took his hand. Declan, you're not crazy. You're grieving. Your brain's trying to rewrite the ending because it can't accept what happened. He looked down at their joined hands, thumb brushing the edge of her palm. And what about you? You talk like someone who knows what it's like to rewrite endings. Her stomach tightened. That's because I do. She hesitated, then exhaled slowly. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a nurse. The kind of people who fixed everything and everyone. They fought sometimes, but they loved me hard. When they died, I thought if I could keep everything perfect, grades, college, work, relationships, I could keep them alive somehow. Did it work? For a while. Until I realized I'd turned my life into a shrine instead of a story. Declan studied her for a long moment. That's what this house became for me. A shrine. I kept walking it because I thought if I stopped, it would mean I'd stopped loving them. Maybe loving them doesn't mean reliving the worst night, Iris said softly. Maybe it means remembering the good ones, too. He gave a bitter smile. Like what? Tell me about Rosie, she said. Something real. Something good. At first he resisted. Then the edges of his voice softened. She had this habit of talking to the moon. Every night before bed. She'd open her window and whisper, "Good night, Mr. Moon. Watch Daddy's plane." She thought he could see me through it. Iris smiled, eyes wet. That's beautiful. She used to draw on the walls, too. Vivian hated it. I said we should paint over it, but she wouldn't. She said, "It's her handwriting. We'll miss it someday." She was right. Iris glanced at the hallway walls, and something inside her clicked. "There are markings," she said, standing. "I thought they were just scuffs." Declan followed her into the hall. Under the morning light, faint streaks of color bloomed on the plaster. Tiny suns, stick figures, hearts drawn in faded crayon. "Rosie's drawings," he whispered. His hand hovered over them, trembling. "I thought they were gone." "They never left," Iris said. He let out a quiet, broken laugh. "Neither did I." For a long time, they just stood there, two people framed by memory, him touching the past, her witnessing it. When he finally turned to her, there was a shift in his eyes, something unspoken but unmistakable. Not romantic yet, but real. A fragile tether forming where fear used to live. "I don't think I can do this alone," Declan admitted. "You don't have to," Iris said. "You just have to want to stop walking the same loop." He nodded, slowly. "Then maybe tonight, I stay. Not to protect. Just to remember." Iris smiled. "We'll start there." That night, they sat together in the living room, lights low, rain steady against the windows. Declan pulled a photo from his wallet, creased, worn, the edges nearly transparent. Vivian, smiling. Rosie mid-laugh, ice cream on her chin. "Sometimes I worry I'll forget the sound of their voices," he said. "You won't," Iris promised. "You'll just stop being scared of remembering." For the first time, Declan believed her. When pain finally finds a witness, it starts to lose its power. Have you ever shared a memory that hurt so much you almost couldn't say it out loud? If this part made you feel something, don't disappear. Stay. The next few days slipped by like mist, not peaceful but gentler. Declan stayed, with Iris's cautious permission, and the house began to breathe differently. He fixed things without asking, a leaky faucet, a loose stair rail, a flickering light. Little acts of repair that looked ordinary but felt sacred. Each nail driven, each screw tightened, each sound of effort became a heartbeat in a house that had forgotten how to feel alive. And Iris, for the first time since she moved in, didn't flinch at night. The creaks and sighs of the old would no longer sounded like warnings. They sounded like memories settling in. On the third evening, they sat on the porch steps wrapped in Margot's quilt, the sky turning lavender with the last stretch of daylight. Iris sipped tea, Declan cradled his old thermos like it was something holy. "Rosie used to call sunsets sky hugs," he said quietly. "Said that was how the day said goodbye." Iris smiled. "She sounds like someone who saw beauty everywhere." She did. Vivian too. He paused. "I think that's what makes the silence worse now. The world used to be loud with love." They sat there in that silence, not the hollow kind this time, but the kind that holds understanding. "You know," Iris said after a while, "I thought this house hated me." "Why?" "It kept rejecting me. Doors sticking. Windows refusing to close. Everything creaked, groaned, resisted." She gave a soft laugh. "Maybe it wasn't the house. Maybe it was me." Declan looked over at her. "You've been running from something too, haven't you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "A life that looked perfect on paper. Clients who smiled to my face but picked apart every design behind my back. Friends who stopped calling because I stopped showing up. A family that's gone, and a version of me that never really felt safe anywhere." Declan studied her, the lines around his eyes deepening. "You sound like someone who's been surviving instead of living." She exhaled a laugh that wasn't quite a laugh. "Takes one to know one." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe it does." Later that night, the storm rolled in, thunder shaking the windows, rain hammering the roof. Power flickered once, then died completely. "Great," Iris muttered. "I didn't save the file I was working on. Guess the universe wants you to take a break." She shot him a look, but the edge of her mouth turned up. "You're surprisingly calm for a guy who used to check every lock twice a night." He shrugged. "Maybe I finally believe I'm not the only one awake." Something in her chest shifted. Not romantic, not yet. Just safe. Like she'd been carrying a weight she didn't realize until someone quietly took part of it. They lit candles. Declan found a flashlight and an old battery-powered radio in the hall closet. Soft static hummed until a faint melody broke through, an old jazz station that sounded half underwater, half dream. Declan leaned back on the couch. Vivian loved this kind of music. She'd dance while she cooked, even when she couldn't carry a tune. Did you dance with her? He smiled faintly. Sometimes. Rosie would stand on my feet and pretend to lead. Iris smiled too, blinking away tears that surprised her. You're really lucky, you know. Not because you lost them, but because you loved them that much. Declan's voice dropped. And you? Have you ever loved like that? She hesitated. Not yet. I thought I had once, but it was more about being needed than being seen. Declan nodded slowly. Maybe that's what love actually is, being seen, even when you're not looking your best. Something warm bloomed in the air between them. They didn't talk for a long time after that. The storm filled the space, rain against windows, thunder rumbling like the world's heartbeat. Declan closed his eyes, not out of fear this time, but peace. When he opened them again, Iris was leaning back on the other end of the couch, candlelight flickering across her face. She looked almost at ease, her guard softened. Do you ever think, she said softly, that maybe we were meant to find each other? Not like fate, more like accident with purpose. He thought about it. Maybe sometimes broken things find each other because they recognize the shape of the cracks. Iris smiled. Then I guess we're both mosaics now. Declan let out a low, genuine laugh, the first one since he could remember. It startled them both. The lights flickered back on. But neither of them moved. For the first time, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt healed. Sometimes it's not love that saves you, it's understanding. Have you ever met someone who made you stop feeling alone, even for a moment? If this chapter gave you that feeling, don't look away. Stay with the story. It's just starting to breathe. It happened 2 nights later. Not with shouting, not with doors slamming, but with a single unbearable truth. Declan had been doing better. He'd started therapy again during the day, visiting the VA clinic with Iris's encouragement. He'd even stopped checking the locks every hour. There were mornings he'd make coffee first, and Iris would think, maybe we're really getting somewhere. But grief doesn't heal in straight lines. It loops. It waits. That evening, Iris found him in Rosie's room, her room, sitting on the floor by the window seat. The yellow walls glowed faintly under the lamp. He was holding a small worn object in both hands. What's that? She asked softly. He looked up, eyes far away. Rosie's rabbit. I found it in the attic. Thought I'd thrown it out when I moved. Guess it stayed. The stuffed toy was faded, one ear hanging by a few stitches. Iris felt her throat close. It must have been hers during everything, he finished. Yeah. He brushed his thumb over the fabric, so tenderly it broke her heart. She used to take it everywhere. I used to tell her Mr. Rabbit was her guardian, that he'd keep the monsters away. Iris stepped closer. You did protect her, Declan. You just... No, he looked up sharply. Don't say that. I didn't. Something cold crept into his tone. She stopped where she was. He stood slowly, staring at the toy like it was burning him. You keep saying it wasn't my fault, but you weren't there. You didn't see. You didn't smell the smoke or the blood or he broke off, pressing a hand to his temple. Declan, Iris said carefully. Breathe. You're here. You're safe. He shook his head, backing away. No, I'm not. None of us are. You don't understand. His voice rose. Panic, guilt, confusion, all the ghosts flooding back at once. I told them to lock the back door, he muttered. I told them. But I forgot to fix it. I forgot. Declan, it's okay. It's not okay, he shouted, and the sound made Iris flinch. He froze instantly, horror washing over his face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean. She swallowed hard. I know you didn't. But the damage was done, not from fear of him, but from what she saw in his eyes, the part of him that still lived inside that night. He sank onto the bed, head in his hands. I shouldn't be here. You shouldn't have to deal with this. I thought I could, God, I thought I could be normal again. Declan, you are. I'm not. His voice cracked. You think this is healing? Me sleeping on your couch, pretending I'm not still hearing my daughter cry in my dreams? You think this house is redemption? It's a cage. For both of us. Her chest tightened. That's not true. He looked at her, really looked at her, and there was so much pain there she could barely stand it. You said you felt haunted when you moved in, he whispered. You were right. I'm the haunting. They sat in silence, the rain beginning again outside, soft and relentless. Iris, he said finally, quieter now. You should call the VA. Tell them I need to come back. She felt tears press at her eyes. Is that what you want? No, he said. But it's what I need. She wanted to argue, to tell him that running back to isolation wasn't the answer. But something in her knew, this wasn't running. It was responsibility. The first real step toward recovery. Still, her voice broke. If you go back, you have to promise me you'll keep going to therapy. That you'll let people help you this time. He nodded, eyes glassy. I'll try. But I can't stay here. I don't want to ruin what peace you found. You didn't ruin it, she whispered. You gave it to me. He smiled faintly, a small broken beautiful thing, and reached out to touch her shoulder. You saved me, Iris. Even if I couldn't stay saved. That night, he packed quietly. Just his jacket, a few things he'd brought, the photograph of Vivian and Rosie. He left the rabbit on the window seat. When he reached the door, Iris stood watching, hands trembling. Declan, she said. If you ever feel like coming home again, this place will still be here. I will still be here. He hesitated, then nodded once. Good night, Iris. The door closed softly behind him. The house went still. For the first time, the silence didn't feel safe. It felt empty. She found the rabbit the next morning, sitting where he'd left it, one ear dangling, fabric still faintly smelling of cedar and rain. She held it to her chest and let herself cry, not for fear, but for the kind of loss that comes after hope. Sometimes healing means letting go before you're ready. Have you ever had to say goodbye to someone who helped you find yourself again? If this part hurt a little, that's how you know it's real. Stay, the story's not done yet. For the first few days after Declan left, Iris couldn't bring herself to go into Rosie's room. She moved through the house in silence, her footsteps too loud in the empty spaces he'd once filled. The chair he used at breakfast stayed pushed slightly out, like he might sit down any moment. The old thermos sat forgotten on the counter. Every morning, she told herself she'd move them. Every night, she didn't. The house felt heavier again. Not haunted, not anymore, but missing something. She'd thought letting Declan go was the right thing. The responsible thing. But every time she walked past the yellow doorway, something in her chest whispered otherwise. On the fifth night, she found herself sitting on the couch in the dark, the rabbit in her lap. Her phone sat beside her, the VA number pulled up but unsent. What would she even say? Hi, it's Iris, the stranger who lives in the house your patient keeps breaking into. Could you tell him I think he still belongs somewhere? She smiled bitterly at the thought, but the smile broke halfway through. It was easier when fear had been the only feeling. Fear had boundaries. Compassion didn't. She ran her thumb along the rabbit's worn fabric. He said you weren't scared anymore, Rosie, she thought. But I think he still is. She didn't hit call. Not yet. Instead, she whispered to the empty room, you're not the haunting, Declan. You're the heartbeat this house forgot. Meanwhile, at the VA, Declan was counting time by the rhythm of the clock on the wall. Day 3 back, and he already hated the fluorescent lights, the thin mattresses, the way the staff looked at him with polite pity. He'd thought returning here would feel safe. But safety wasn't the same as peace. Every night he dreamed of the house again, except now, it wasn't Rosie's voice he heard. It was Iris's. You gave me peace, she'd said. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, reaching for a ghost that wasn't gone this time, just out of reach. Dr. Brennan had noticed the change. You're quieter, she said during their session. But not calmer. Talk to me, Declan. Where are you tonight? He hesitated. Then, in a house that isn't mine anymore. Whose house is it? He looked down at his hands. Someone who shouldn't have had to carry my ghosts. But she did anyway. Dr. Brennan leaned forward. Do you want to go back? He hesitated again, then shook his head slowly. No. She deserves peace. The doctor studied him for a long moment. Declan, peace isn't something you leave behind for others. It's something you build together. Her words lingered long after she left. That night, Declan couldn't sleep. He walked the quiet halls, his steps echoing, the fluorescent lights humming. When he passed the window at the end of the corridor, he stopped. Rain streaked the glass. Portland rain, constant, gentle, familiar. For the first time in months, he didn't see fire behind his eyelids. He saw yellow walls. Warm light. A woman with tired eyes who hadn't run away from his brokenness. He whispered Iris, and the sound of her name grounded him more than any medication ever had. The next morning, Iris finally went into Rosie's room. Sunlight pooled on the floorboards, hitting the little drawings on the wall she and Declan had uncovered. She touched one, a tiny crayon heart, and exhaled. You kept him safe as long as you could, she murmured. Now it's my turn. She picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over the number. She almost didn't press it. But then she remembered what Declan had said on his last night there. You saved me, Iris. Even if I couldn't stay saved. Maybe this wasn't about saving anymore. Maybe it was about choosing to stay alive together. She pressed call. At the VA, Declan's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then instinct, or something deeper, made him answer. Hello. For a second, there was only silence. Then a voice he thought he'd never hear again. I don't know if this is the right thing, Iris said quietly. But the house misses you. And so do I. Declan closed his eyes. Iris. I'm not asking you to come back forever. Just, maybe for coffee. Or closure. Or both. He smiled, small real. You're dangerous, you know that? How so? You make me think I can live again. Then maybe that's not danger, she said softly. Maybe that's the point. Declan didn't say yes. Not yet. But when he hung up, he packed his bag again, not out of compulsion, but out of choice. He looked at Rosie's picture one last time, whispered, I think it's okay now, kiddo, and stepped out into the rain. This time, he wasn't walking toward the past, he was walking toward forgiveness. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't saying goodbye, it's deciding to come back. Have you ever had to choose between staying broken or trying again? The house was quiet again. But this time, Iris didn't fear the quiet. She understood it. She'd spent the afternoon dusting the shelves and opening every window. The December air was cold, but she let it in anyway. It felt like the house was exhaling at last. Rosie's drawings still marked the hallway, but now Iris had framed them behind glass. Not to erase the past, to honor it. By evening, she'd brewed 2 cups of coffee and set them on the table, just in case. One black, one with sugar. She smiled at herself for doing it. You're ridiculous, she thought. He might not even come. And yet, when the clock read 2:47 a.m., a knock sounded at the door. Not the jarring kind that used to send terror down her spine. A soft, careful knock. She opened it before fear could answer for her. Declan stood on the porch, rain-soaked and breathless, as if he'd run the last few blocks. I couldn't sleep, he said. Figured you'd understand. Iris stepped aside. You remember where everything is. He smiled faintly and stepped in. The air shifted, familiar, warm. The ghost of the man who once haunted the house was gone. Only the man himself remained. They sat on the couch, 2 steaming mugs between them. For a while, neither spoke. There was no need. Finally, Declan said, I went by their graves today. Iris's eyes softened. How was it? Different. He stared into his coffee. For the first time, I didn't apologize. I just talked to them. Told them about you. About the house. About how the yellow walls look brighter now. She smiled. I think they'd like that. I think so too. He exhaled, the sound somewhere between a sigh and a release. You know what's strange? I used to come here because I couldn't let go. Now I came back because I finally could. Iris nodded slowly. Letting go isn't the same as forgetting. He met her gaze. No. It's remembering without bleeding. When the rain quieted, they went to Rosie's room together. Declan paused at the doorway, eyes glinting with both sorrow and peace. He reached for the rabbit on the window seat. Iris had mended its torn ear with yellow thread. "She'd like this," he said softly. "She'd like that you came back." He set the rabbit down gently, facing the window, as if giving it a view of the dawn that was just beginning to break. "I think she's finally home," he whispered. Iris took his hand, not as comfort this time, but as acknowledgement. Two survivors standing at the edge of what hurt them, choosing to stay. Downstairs, the kettle whistled softly. Morning light filtered through the rain. Declan turned to her. "You know, for the first time in years, I want to plan something." "Like what?" He smiled, small and real. "Tomorrow." She laughed, quiet, disbelieving but free. "That's a start." Later, when he left just before sunrise, he didn't say goodbye. He said, "See you soon." And she believed him. Because healing wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary. 2 cups of coffee cooling side by side. A repaired stuffed rabbit. A phone call answered. The house finally felt like what Aunt Margot had promised. Not a cage, but a beginning. That night, Iris stood by the window and whispered the words that had once terrified her. "Get out of my house." Then softer, with a smile. "Unless you're meant to be here." Every story of fear can become a story of healing, if someone stays long enough to listen. Do you believe people can really find peace after loss? Tell me what this ending means to you below. And if you've stayed with Iris and Declan until now, maybe that means this story found you for a reason.
Thank you for staying with this story to the very end. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you'll not miss out on the next video.